One of the things that can be seen in today's games is the tendency of most game makers to present a realistic world to gamers. Little by little, the gap between games and the real world is decreasing, and it is impossible to distinguish some games with reality. Technology is advancing day by day, and if you compare games 20 years ago to today's titles such as God of War Ragnarok and Red Dead Redemption 2, you'll find great improvements in game graphics. Not long ago, for example, the video comparing one of Modern Warfare 2's missions to the real world became trending, a clip that compared Amsterdam COD MW2 and Amsterdam in the real world. But can merely making a game with realistic rules and graphics make it attractive and successful? Let's scrutinize this until we finally get a clear answer. Humans may disagree on a number of topics, and this is perfectly normal. Some gamers love racing's works, and others prefer to experience Outlast in the dark of night. In other words, each audience uses and enjoys video games differently. Taste plays an important role in the realistic nature of the games. I'll give you an example. The criticisms that some gamers had about Red Dead Redemption 2 were too realistic in the game, because these people liked to have a lot of freedom to act like the brother of this series, GTA, and to be able to create chaos and enjoy their experience. Others claimed that the realistic experience that Red Dead Redemption 2 provided was much better than the GTA series, because these people could experience the real mood of life in the Wild West, along with Arthur and his band, and have more real feelings for the game and, in some ways, imagine themselves in that era. Therefore, each gamer's demand for the work he experiences is different from that of another gamer, and this cannot be ignored. Some are interested in realistic games because they are much easier to believe and imagine, and some want to present a fantasy space away from reality. Naturally, the advancement of technology has always been attractive to humans, and this is a natural matter. For example, upgrading old phones to today's smart versions is fascinating to us, or the joy of watching a black and white movie with a color film is incomparable. Of course, there's no doubt that a black and white film like Alfred Hitchcock's works might be more appealing than thousands of today's blockbuster and contentless films. Therefore, for a gamer who has witnessed significant improvements in visual quality of games, it is natural to at least enjoy watching or experiencing works with realistic and high-quality graphics, and in general, with a summation, it can be said that humans enjoy progress, and one of the positivity of realistic graphics in the success of a video game is the same. The first feature of a game for the audience is its fun. In other words, it may become a game with pixel graphics and simple like Stardew Valley, so popular among gamers that many realistic titles don't even have the ability to approach it. There are also works such as Rise Son of Rome, which, although it offers a realistic visual experience, cannot entertain the player as they should, and perhaps will eventually be a beautiful, tedious, but boring work for the gamer. In general, there are countless games that, despite presenting a realistic and present-day graphic, have no ability to entertain their audience at all and have suffered a very difficult defeat. The point that we generally see among today's gamers, and often agree on it, the lack of attractiveness of this generation's games is the proportion of the old generations. Today's gamers, for example, have less enthusiasm for finishing different titles, and naturally, this indicates a flaw in today's games. This has led many gamers to migrate from AAA games and big blockbusters to independent titles. The reason for this is also quite clear. The creators of such games do not have the ability to create strange and high-level graphical works due to lack of access to resources, and therefore, they use their creativity to create different games. Ultimately, the output is a game with simple or even two-dimensional visual graphics, but it remains an awesome and entertaining output. For this reason, the audience enjoys every single moment is spent in these games, bringing much greater success than a realistic, but not so enjoyable, effect. So of course, so far, you agree with me that necessarily the existence of a high-level, realistic graphics doesn't make a work successful, and there are much more important parts that need to be addressed first. However, the best answer we can extract from these things is that the most important feature necessary for a game's success is its fun, and now this fun can be due to various elements that do not fit into this discussion. Creating an attractive graphical work in realistic detail is essential for people who are interested in this style of games if they maintain the overall structure and standards of a video game such as fun. But if realistic graphics are at times a positive feature, what's wrong with some of today's realistic titles that have lost their fun? Remember the gameplay trailer of The Last of Us? In the weapons upgrade section, Joel worked realistically with guns, and there was a not-so-necessary animated series on the reload section of guns and the use of tools in the trailer, which were eventually eliminated from the final game. Or at Elden Ring, it has been tried to make all the batting animations happen as quickly as possible so that the speed and rhythm of the struggles do not decrease. This also applies to the formation of weapons in the hands of tarnished character, which is why there are a series of very minor visual flaws such as the inclusion of a weapons object or shield in the armor and cape of the protagonists. There are a series of features in the real world that are boring and time-effective in themselves, and naturally, if they enter the game, they not only don't make it attractive, but they may make a lot of trouble. For example, a gun's full reload is time-taking, and even many people are trying to speed up the reloading process when it takes to fill the magazine and, in general, the reloading process. Now, there is no need for this action to be copied and pasted directly from the real world into the game, and only providing a fascinating, but fast animation in the game is enough. Suppose a work like the second version of the Watch Dogs series tried to realistically incorporate the hacking process into its game. In that case, can you imagine how slow the final gameplay would have been? Therefore, one of the reasons for the failure of some games made with this feature is that game makers do not pay attention to this issue, and ultimately, the work they present is titled and soulless, which will have no positive point but the graphics section. As I said, the first feature of a game is its fun, and any action that occurs to slow down too much gameplay or boring the game will ultimately end up at the detriment of the effect. The best solution is to model many not so necessary acts even if we make a realistic work. Games, genres and purposes have a variety of purposes, and naturally, the existence of realistic games in the industry is essential and can give a good variety to video games. On the other hand, as I said, there are many tastes, and ultimately, it is the gamer who prefers to go which way, and yet, it should never be forgotten that ultimately, the gamer wants to play and should not sacrifice the standards of a game, its graphics and physical rules. Do you believe that realistic games focused on visual graphics have become an obstacle to the growth of creators' creativity? How much does realistic graphics and physics affect your purchase in a game? Share your opinions with me in the comments section.